Hi, and welcome to this edition of Great Minds Print Alike, where I get the opportunity to speak to great minds in our business and our industry about all things marketing. I am delighted to be joined today by Dan Jenkins from Wagada Digital. Dan is a good friend and colleague of mine. We've been working together for about 18 months now, Dan.
Yeah.
And the reason that I've asked Dan to join me on our podcast today is because I put a plea out to Dan a couple of weeks ago and basically said, help, I'm in AI overwhelm. And the conversation we had is, I'm sure that there's many more marketeers out there who feel the way I feel. I go on LinkedIn, I read in the press, I'm looking on the internet, and all I see is the next development in AI. And quite frankly, I want to get off the bus. I want to take a breath. I'm totally overwhelmed and I don't know what to do next. So I called you, Dan, said, with my plea and said, will you come on our podcast and help me make the complex simple? Talk to me about what are the basics of AI. So to start, I guess, just that. Where do we begin? Where do we start looking at this?
That's a great question. Where do we begin? And I think, truthfully, as much as we see ourselves as early adopters and that we are in this early phase of AI, I often hark back to the fact that AI has actually been around since something like 1951. This is not fundamentally new. This is something that has been evolving over a long period of time. I think what's changed is how accessible AI has become, how aware we've become of AI and AI solutions, and in particular, how it's been able to kind of capture the public's attention. So not just marketers, but, all people of manner of ages, backgrounds, you name it. So I think what's happened in the last couple of years is that we suddenly find ourselves on this roller coaster where genuinely the vast majority of people feel like they're in a form of catch up. And whether you like it or not, you feel like you are trying to get on that bus. You're trying to keep up with the momentum of change. But I guess the one rewarding aspect of that is that people aren't alone in that. That is, this is a huge monumental shift in terms of society at large. And so I think that, as I say, even though, yes, on a fundamental level, it can feel incredibly overwhelming. It can feel like we don't know where to begin. And at times it can appear like everybody is kind of ahead of the game and they've got their act together. I think deep down, truthfully, for a lot of people, that is not the case. And so it is about going back to the beginning, going back to basics and identifying what AI means to us as individuals and what AI means to us as an organization, and what challenges we're facing as individuals, marketers, and organizations to then be able to start an AI journey. But in many respects, we're still in the early stage. Even I talk about 1951. When you look at time as eternity, we're still relatively early on in this journey. It just feels like in the last couple of years, it's accelerated at real pace.
And I think it's interesting what you say there. Some of the language that's used around AI. You yourself just then said it's a monumental shift.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal change. The speed of change, all those ways in which we describe AI can in themselves feel quite overwhelming and
Yeah.
almost intimidating.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, what I'm looking for is that simple steps and stages. What should I do first? And is it easy to answer that question, what I should do first?
In a way, yes. I mean, I think that because people are now, as you say, sort of clambering to get on this bus, that can bring with it issues in the sense that you're trying to adopt all these things and you're trying to adopt it all at once and you feel like you have to do it overnight. It's like, where are we going to be on our AI journey a week next Monday? Whereas really realistically, that's not going to happen. You're not going to see that sharp change. So I think as you would engage with any business challenge or marketing challenge, it is genuinely about taking a step back and looking and asking yourself the same questions. What are our biggest challenges at the moment? What is it that we want to achieve? Where do we want to get to? That simple kind of goal planning. And then from there, you need to start looking at what are the solutions and how are we going to get there? Because more and more there are tools which again, the volume of tools that are out there can make us feel like we don't know where to begin, and the tools that are rebranding or repositioning themselves, or suggesting that they are AI tools when really they might have an aspect of AI to them, that can also lead to a degree of overwhelm. So that first action, that first checkpoint, if you like, is to kind of take a step back as an organization and look at where you want to be. The other thing I'd add to that, though, as well, is that it shouldn't be seen as an individual's challenge. So as individuals, I think, and as passionate marketers, we have this desire to achieve success for a brand, to achieve success for the client, to deliver customer value, all those things. But we need to remember that this is a shift that an organization needs to embrace, that an organization needs to adapt. And so actually working with your colleagues and identifying who's best placed in the organization to help move some of this stuff forward is also going to be really, really important. Who's my ambassador? Who's my champion? Who can I call upon to help me in this kind of mission, really? And take it as more of a shared challenge than an individual one that just rests on your shoulders as a team leader or a
Yeah,
senior
I was going to
marketer.
say, I guess, we may find from that it's not actually the leadership team who are the best people to drive this forward.
So to give you an idea, even at Wagada Digital, we have been, monitoring this for a while, working within it for a while, embracing aspects of AI. And some of the key ambassadors from within our organization that are helping driving this shift aren't necessarily on the leadership team, but they have a clear set of responsibilities, accountabilities, and a passion as to how we then adopt that internally as an organization, as well as how we work with clients on it. So indeed, it's about how the SLT, the leadership team, make that happen, but all of the accountability and the onus doesn't necessarily have to sit with
And
those individuals.
I guess the individual team members are far closer to some of those challenges that AI can solve. For me, one of the things I find quite challenging is when I look at that is I don't know what AI can solve. I know what my challenges are. I know what I need to do more of. I know what I want to do less of, but I don't know if AI can fix that for me. And you mentioned earlier yourself, there are therefore so many tools that I can look at that it's like walking into the British Library and trying to find that one book, isn't it?
Yeah.
That in itself can be quite tough.
It can be tough. I think, and I think that what that can start to lead to with all of that tool sort of overwhelm when you're looking at all these different platforms or softwares or solutions. I mean, even just basic like sort of open language models like ChatGPT, there's alternatives. We talk about the common ones, but more and more are also starting, more and more are coming onto the marketplace. And what that can lead you to is actually starting to spread yourself too thinly.
Yes.
You can find yourself suddenly going, well, we've in the last 12 months, we've adopted these 4 new tools, and this one's looking after that, and this one's looking after that. And actually, there's still an argument to really make sure you're streamlining that, to focus in on, if there's tools that you're using or things that you're adopting as a company that already actually cover some of these areas or have a degree of AI kind of baked into them. Do you really need to be adopting lots and lots and lots of new tools, or do you just need to change the way that you're using with, the ones that you have, so that you're still in that sort of that focused tech stack? You're not like spreading yourselves really thin. So I do think it can be overwhelming, but actually just focusing in as much as possible is what's key. And again, having colleagues and members of the team that can be ambassadors to do some of that investigatory work, split the load. If there are 4 key challenges that you want to solve as a business, people can go off and do the preliminary research on those different areas, discount a lot, to then regroup and bring it to the table and go, this is the best solution for this. So yeah, again, I think it comes back to it being a team effort to approach that, because otherwise, we could be researching for the next 48 hours and we still wouldn't have looked at them all. We would have barely even scratched the surface.
And it's that piece, isn't it? Again, and I always say this, in the pursuit of perfection, you get nothing done.
Exactly.
And finding the perfect tool may well mean that you actually never get to use one of the tools that's available.
That's right.
And I guess, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, it doesn't have to be ridiculously expensive. So you're not investing significant amounts of money. So you can be more flexible. You can change. You can see what works.
I think the key to all of it is that kind of comes back to marginal gains. So like, I'm a big believer in marginal gains. Like as an organization or a growing organization, you need to really take a step-by-step approach. And I've had conversations with marketers where they seriously feel like they're looking up a mountain and they go, I've got to get it I've got to understand what our usage policy is. I've got to understand what our internal and our external policy is. I've got to understand, what tools I need to adopt. I've got to make sure that is then not only what we're adopting, but how that is effectively adopted by the team. I've got to get buy-in from this department because guess what? They're all traditionalists and they don't believe in AI. And you listen to all this and I go, oh, this is going to give me a sleepless night. And it's not even my responsibility to make this happen. And I think that only when you step back again and look at timescales, when are you really going to get there? You're not going to get to the end overnight. We're talking about what tools to use. Have we even, as I say, gone back to identify exactly what problems we're trying to solve, or if we have the resource within the organization to do that already? So it is actually really important as well to start to be realistic about how quickly you're going to be able to adopt certain things, because for many organizations, they're not going to be left behind by AI. They have already got fundamental things that perhaps aren't in place to be able to fully adopt the AI stage. And so I think you need to start really looking at it incrementally and go, what are those marginal gains? What are we going to do over the next 6 months to then take it to the next level?
And I'd just pick up on a little nugget you said there about it may not be the solution. So I guess sometimes, can I be question to myself,
Yeah.
can I be brave enough in certain situations in the current climate to say, actually, AI for this problem
Yeah.
isn't the answer? That feels quite brave to say that, 'cause it feels
almost
like
controversial.
totally. It almost feels like I'm going against the grain. Obviously, AI is going to fix everything. Obviously, AI is the answer to all my prayers, and it's going to make me a better marketer. It's going to make me a more proficient leader. It's going to make my business grow quicker. But in some ways, is the brave thing sometimes to say it's not for me?
I think so, absolutely, and I think that's actually really important, and I think that we are going through a phase where people are figuring that out.
Yeah.
And they're sort of figuring out where are the boundaries, where are the benefits, what's right, what's wrong, and the truth is that there's no universal answer, because you'd listen to one person who, or theory that is all in AI that would suggest, well, if you want to know the answer to anything, AI's got it for you. If you want to know how to do this, don't even think about it, just ask AI. That would be one school of thought. Whereas another school of thought might be on the a more central direction, where you go, well, how am I going to use AI to assist me, to elevate me, to help me as my agent, my partner in this, my confidant, that person to bounce ideas off, so that I'm able to bring all of this human knowledge and information, and then just use something, as we have done for years. We've gone to search engines. When I was in school, I remember warnings around Wikipedia. Be careful what you take from Wikipedia, because it's not always going to, you know what I mean? So there's always been this scenario where, as people, we have evolved and adapted and sourced out information and, gone to places for that. But maybe that's where in some areas AI is going to be your support, as opposed to just completely managing and overseeing certain tasks that we don't want it to yet. You know what I mean?
And I think there's also a fear that, as a marketer, if I get on the AI bus, am I employing my replacement?
Yeah.
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 And it's certainly a fear for a number of marketeers I talk to. There is this noise, this chat that AI is going to replace roles.
Yeah.
And marketing is a role that people talk about it being able to replace. I would, of course, argue that that's not the case.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I'm grappling with myself when I use AI, and I use
Yeah.
GPT, and I'm actually a fan of Google Gemini more than ChatGPT. I don't know whether that's controversial or not. And we've started to use AI for some content creation. But I kind of always feel like it's not going to be able to replace that little quirk that is Precision Proco, that little thing we've got, that X factor, so to speak. But I'm also aware of a lot of marketers in different industries who feel that, by adopting it, they are putting themselves at risk.
Yeah. I think that's natural. I
Yeah.
think that's completely natural. I think feeling that way, it feels like a threat. It feels like the unknown. And that's not new. When you think about evolution, I mean, once upon a time, there'd have been a fear when a tractor was brought into agriculture, right? Because you would look at it and you go, well, we've always done it this way. And then we had the horse-pulled plow or whatever, and then that evolved things. And then tractors would go, hang on a minute, is this trustworthy? Is this safe? Is it going to replace a human element? fast forward through time, we have these moments of evolution to where we are today.
Yeah.
And agriculture is still in existence. It's just evolving and changing, and we're using different things in different ways. So in that respect, there's a similarity. There's a comparison there because, if you listened to marketers, professionals, people that would forecast what would happen, and you went to talks or you spoke with, rubbed shoulders with people 5 or 10 years ago, whether they'd be predicting that this is exactly what would be going on right now? Not really. It wasn't exactly what people were looking at. It wasn't really a focus. It wasn't where they saw the sector changing. They got some things right, but a lot not. So we can sit here and sort of surmise, and I can give my views on what I think is going to be the changing face of the sector or where we need to adapt. But truthfully, it's only in time that we will know that. And the other thing in that is that I'm a big believer that people and societies, they continuously evolve and adapt and change. They just do. And so even though we are seeing some of these areas as threats, people that and professionals that remain agile, that test things, that try things, that make decisions, like you said, I'm going to make that decision as to where that's helping us and where it isn't, and you're going to give real thought to that.
Yeah.
That's happening en masse. And so where we will be is genuinely unknown to a lot of individuals and organizations, and even those that believe that they know where we're going to be in 10 or 20 years. It's pretty hard to predict,
Yeah.
So I think the important thing is to have a stance, to have a view and an opinion, and to tackle that with conviction. And I think that's what's really important, because truthfully, it's only as time goes on that we will see where things move on a bigger scale.
And we met, I think, 18 months ago.
Yeah.
And the reason we met is you came to a conference I was at, and spoke about AI. And I remember at the time you provided, because I was frantically writing down a list of tools that I, as a marketer, could potentially consider at that time. And I frantically wrote that list down, and it's somewhere in a folder back at the office. But I don't think I'll look at that list again, because probably most of those tools have changed and adapted, and there are new tools. How do we keep on top of that? How do we research what's new? Where do we go to find out what the next tool is?
So I think there's so much information out there now, and I think we should be actively consuming this information.
Yep.
I think the more that people listen to conversations like this, listen to pieces and glimpses and experts of thought leadership and reviews and information on platforms like LinkedIn, or speak with industry peers as well. What are you doing in your organization? How are you adopting AI in your organization? I think the more that we do that, the better placed we are. The other side I would say to that is to read between the lines with things as well, to consume that information, but to start to make informed decisions.
Yep.
Because, as I say, that industry is moving very, very fast. And lots of tools that might have been, top of the list 2 years ago have evolved or have changed, or there's more in the market. You touched upon Gemini, Claude is a fantastic tool, for example, which is used really heavily for certain tasks and support. So again, I think that is forever changing, but I would just say to actively consume content, to listen, to ask questions, to talk, but to not worry as well if some of those tools go in through one ear and out through the other, because guess what? You might hear them mentioned again in 6 weeks. You might hear them mentioned again in a year or two, and then when the time's right, it's the right one for you. So I would keep an open mind about that. But just look at consuming that information, but then using that how you will in terms of understanding what you really need as a business.
So just to go back to that roadmap of what I can do next. So I want to walk away today, and I want to have 2 or 3 things that I need to do. So the first thing I need to do is I need to sit with my team and really look at what our key challenges are. Yeah. And I can think of a couple at the moment that are big challenges for me as the leader of the marketing team in our business. So that's the first thing I do. So when I've identified that first challenge, or those 2 challenges, and I engage my team, we mentioned earlier, I get my team to feel that they're a part of this evolution. I'm not going to say revolution, this evolution of how we do things. Then where do I go? What's my next step?
So I think first things first, because you're absolutely right. I completely agree. That's your first step. And the best thing about that is that you haven't actually got to mention AI once.
Yeah.
You do that step. AI isn't actually part of the conversation. That is a review to be able to go, right, where are we as a team or as an organization, and where do we want to be? And then from there you move it to the next stage where you start to break that down and you start to look at what are the trends, or what is it that we're trying to achieve. And actually I think you could almost categorize that. So you could go, is this have we got efficiency things that we want to work on? Do we want to save time? Is that an issue? Is it skill level and resource? Do we have enough skill within the department, or are there certain aspects where the team feel that a degree of skill is missing? Is it about information? Am I not getting enough visibility and information? Or is it about our ability to create things? Is it that we're not, we haven't got the resource to do visual content, or whatever that might be? And then you start to break that down, and then you start to look at things differently, because then you're going, right, we've looked at the challenges, we've categorized those challenges. Now, how are we going to get there? And that's when you start to open up the conversation about, is it a recruitment challenge? Is it a training challenge? Is it an operational challenge? And then you look at the tools or the platforms or the gaps that can be filled. And can certain aspects like AI help us in those areas? If anecdotally, if everything comes out that what we actually have as a department is the need to improve efficiencies, efficiencies is our issue, then we don't even need at that point to be thinking about things like content generation through AI, generative AI in that respect. But we start to look at operational AI and turning, I don't know, unstructured data into structured information, and ways to make things easier for our team. And you start to go down a path or a journey, and it is a journey, as to what you need from AI within your organization. So I think, categorizing, chunking things up, looking at the trend and how you would group that is what's going to start to help you with a bit of a vision as to if AI can support you as an organization in those areas.
And do I need to be a techie expert in this work?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Okay.
Personally, that's not my, I don't choose to look at things completely technically. I work with a team who are more technical in those areas. I think I don't think that it's the be all and end all to feel completely technically confident. I think you can ask for help in those areas and look within your network and even outside of the organization as to who can I call upon for a bit of guidance, who can I find out more from? Or indeed, like, as I say, with other organizations, how have you adopted it, or what challenges have you faced? Or how did you find having not a particularly technical team, doing these areas? And I think that's how you get there. So I think, no, I don't think you should feel restricted if you don't feel particularly technical. It can feel like a barrier, but I think there are ways around that. Definitely.
Okay. And do I need huge budgets, Dan, for this? Or you're going to say depends?
Ask me after. No.
Yeah.
It depends. Yeah. No, I don't think you do. I think that, I think there's such a widespread range of options, and it comes back a little bit to what you're saying with the volume of tools and things like that, that solutions will invariably come with completely contrasting budgets. I mean, a really nice example of a cost-effective or entry-level like adoption of AI in an organization is even just things like AI note-taking. That, for a lot of organizations, has massively changed their efficiencies, right? And that comes at a minimal or zero cost. Like, there are free AI note-taking tools out there now that integrate with Teams, Zoom, Google Meet, whatever. There are then entry-level costs for those that will give you full meeting notes, summaries, action points, recordings. And there are some organizations that still find that their team members are scrabbling around, making notes and follow-ups and doing things that might take 20, 25 minutes at a time. That's not really the skilled aspect of what they're doing. And that's just a nice example of something that actually can come at a minimal or zero cost. But if you've got a large sales team or a large marketing team, or have lots of internal and external meetings and communications, that kind of thing can actually have such a strong impact where team members are going, God, I actually heard somebody say from another business, this was literally a couple of weeks ago, AI note-taking has completely changed the way they approach their role. They said purely having AI note-taking in place, he said the amount of time it was saving him, and they work within a legal organization as well, so they needed to make sure they had everything recorded. And he said, I'm not just trusting those AI notes as well. It's not like I'm getting this thing and I'm wiping my hands and I'm moving on to the next thing. He was saying about how the amount of efficiency it saved him to just be able to cast his eye over something, make a couple of amendments, log that, move on. has just completely changed his day-to-day and his capacity and his ability to do things. So again, I think that's just an entry-level example of something that is not too challenging to adopt, but can, and not too expensive from an expense perspective, but can have a significant efficiency benefit.
And I guess also thinking of that example, and I'm trying to think of the meetings that I have or the brainstorming sessions that I might have. When I'm desperately trying to write notes, I'm not present in the meeting necessarily. So I'm probably not giving the best to the meeting or the brainstorm session as I could be doing, because I'm desperately trying to keep a note about what I'm saying and what everybody else is saying. So there's double benefit there, maybe, isn't there?
There really is. On a personal level, I found it's changed the way that I conduct meetings and how I engage in meetings.
Okay.
You know, with kind of more external kind of customer or sales type meetings, it does enable you to be far more present, far more in the moment. I still make notes actually, which is interesting. So, yeah, so even I've got the AI thing in there, but then the eye will go down and the pen will go. But it's because that for me is an important part of my thought process. That if there's a really key takeaway or something that I have thought about, and guess what? AI doesn't know my thoughts yet, right? So they're mine. But I want to get down. I'm still doing that. But what that still means is that I've cut out the admin bit. I've cut out I really need to make a note of that because I need to record that. You know, it's that sort of stuff, and it enables you to be much more fluid, much more relaxed, much more human actually in your approach. Just by having all of that stuff being looked after by what is effectively then a bit of an agent, a bit of a buddy, as I say, a bit of a confidant. So it's not replacing me. It's not replacing what I do. It's just changing how I do things. That's just one example. But
it's that lovely piece, isn't it, and this is where I want to get to.
Yeah.
It's about making me better at being me
100%.
rather than making me different or making my organization different. It's about, I'm trying to think of the words here, it's supercharging what we're good at. And the bits that we're not so good at, asking them to help us do that.
So this is what's really, really interesting is that a couple of years ago when this all kind of blew up and everybody's talking about AI and ChatGPT and all these capabilities, right? All of the focus was on kind of generative AI. It was on like image creation, copy creation. You know, you even heard about people that were doing like, I don't know, wedding speeches and their own personal things. And they would just go to these platforms and say, write me a wedding speech for XYZ. And you go, you know, is that really how we're moving as a society? I don't like that, right? But what's interesting is that sort of early phase, and unlike a lot of fads that kind of go boom and then you go, oh, we got bored of that. We're already changing our approach, right? And like how we want to use these things. And I think where we're moving is much more towards that realization of this can elevate me in what I do if I use it in a way that's going to help me. And that is, I think, such an important part of adoption. Like even as on a personal level, I mentioned things there like AI note taking, you know, how I have adopted AI as a marketer and a commercial business person has evolved over the last couple of years to what is in much more of an operational support. For example, you know, if I want to see information quickly, it saves me the time potentially in reviewing data, looking at reports, because I might use a tool that's got AI baked into it where I can ask it a question and it will give me the information. So, for example, HubSpot, you know, HubSpot has got really strong AI power. We use HubSpot as an organization. I'm able to go there, ask it that information that I need, you know, best performing salespeople, deals that are in the pipeline that haven't had very much activity that we should be speaking with. And rather than manually having to set up, you know, triggers, notifications, actions around all of those things, at a glance, I can ask these questions to get these responses. I'm still going to decide what I do with that information.
Of course.
That's still for me. I'm not going to AI going, no, what should I do with this?
What
do I do next? So I think being able to just sort of evolve and use AI in a way that is going to help you to be the best version of yourself in your role is definitely that, you know, one of those early stages in terms of how you actually adopt it as an individual.
So I just want to, I guess, unpack a little bit more about I guess, is it the ethics around AI? And one of the things that we were talking about in our business a couple of weeks ago is just what you said about making us better at being us and keeping the human in what we do. And there seems to be a bit of a backlash, particularly on LinkedIn at the moment, about anybody who uses AI is kind of cheating a little bit. So, you know, you shouldn't use shouldn't use certain emojis, you shouldn't use certain phrases. Do you think it's obvious when people are using AI?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I think sometimes.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting. So LinkedIn actually went really funny quite recently. There was this whole algorithm update where
Yes.
you see it. So like when people were going on, suddenly people were seeing content that was like 2 or 3 weeks old. It was just strange. It wasn't giving you the information that you thought. And I think a big part of that was it was adapting to the type of content that was being posted. It was siphoning and like looking through AI generated content versus not, and making content a bit more evergreen. So, if you've posted something today, rather than it just hang around for a couple of days, it could be popping up on someone's feed in a week or two or something. I think people are becoming much more cute to and kind of aware of, they're seeing trends and signs. There's even with when AI has just been like let loose to kind of generate content, there are buzzwords, there are grammatical things. The usage of hyphens even is a real telltale giveaway sign that something has been generated by AI. And also if you're not prompting effectively. So we talk a lot about good kind of prompt engineering and how to kind of use these AI tools. And again, that example I use, where you might say something like, write me a post on something, is a pretty top level, not very personalized prompt, versus, something much more specific and defined where, you're getting it to generate something. So I think that, yes, there are a lot of telltale and obvious signs that can then kind of cut through. So that's something that you need to be very, very mindful of. I think as well, that's why it's important to decide at what point in the process in some of these things we're using AI. So if we think about using AI to help us be the best version that we can be and do the best at our jobs, it's actually, perhaps it comes in at the second, third, fourth, fifth point in a process. What I think is really interesting is that you might do a podcast, you might have a script for a piece of something, or you might develop a white paper, and you might do all of those actions completely without the use of AI. But maybe then you're going to use AI to help elevate that, or to create some supporting content, or to help you with the themes for the social media content that you want to bounce these ideas off. And then you start to amplify what you're doing. So AI isn't that sort of first rung of the ladder. The human impact has been maybe the first, second, third, fourth rung of the ladder.
Yeah.
But then coming back to a team that maybe we don't have the efficiency, or we don't have the volume of people to do certain things, and we need to amplify what we're doing, that's when you start to call upon the tools to support. So I think that's really important. Within all of that, though, and something that I think doesn't just affect us as marketers, but affects us in general, is kind of misinformation, or understanding what's real and not. And I think that is a concern for a lot of people. I think marketers are naturally then averse to what they can do or what they can create from AI, because they don't want to be on that bandwagon of actually even accidentally creating misinformation, or perhaps misleading people by leading them to believe that something that they're reading or seeing is authentic. And I do think that's an issue that everybody is catching up with, even major news outlets that are like getting sent in video footage. There's natural disasters or things that are happening in the world. Everyone's got a smartphone. Somebody's there to capture it. Now, a certain percentage of what is then sent into news outlets is 100% real and captured in the moment. A lot isn't. People are artificially creating content and sending that out there. So organizations then have to catch up to going, how do we filter through that and make sure that what we're accepting is real and genuine? And I think that's something that we're all catching up to, is then that sort of misinformation and analysis of what's real.
And that's societal, isn't it? It's not
Yes.
it's not just in the business environment. It's not just in, in the roles that we do in marketing. It's a societal thing, isn't it? With fake news, with people being naturally more, what's the word I'm thinking of, more dubious about information that's put in front of them. And I think we have a responsibility as leaders and as marketers to make sure that we, I guess, lead by example on that. But it does go back to that piece, and I'll repeat again, about not using AI to replace, but to enhance. That's where I think I can get the best power, I guess, out of AI.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that there needs to be a decision as well as to like morally and holistically, as a business or as a department or as a team, where the boundaries are, what you want to do with AI. do you want to be an organization that creates a certain type of content using AI, or do you want to be an organization that, again, uses AI to help you with your efficiencies, your operations, kind of so on and so forth? And then what do you do with that? How are you transparent with your
Yeah.
customers? It's interesting because even when you look at like Google search, so obviously we work a lot in SEO and with search, and the whole search experience in search engines is changing massively. The conversation is actually starting to move from kind of search engine optimization to like generative engine optimization. Okay. So it's like we're not just ready for Google, we're ready for all these other platforms as well, because people are now going
And
to
I've asked your
Claude.
team exactly the
There
same
you go.
question.
Yeah.
Where do I go? Because my leadership team are asking me that question. How do
Yeah.
we perform on the, on Chat GPT if you type in who is the best printer in the UK, or, where do I go for this particular service? So I specifically am asking that question.
And we are seeing that more and more. So brands are becoming much more aware of this. Well, because also they're seeing it themselves as people. Marketers are going, well, hang on a minute. And even if you're not a specific SEO or a search marketer or even a digital marketer, you're going, well, the way that I'm engaging with brands online is changing dramatically. Gartner released a report, which is something like, they estimate something like 26% reduction in site traffic in the next sort of 12, 18 months, something like that. Now, by 2026. The thing with that that's really interesting, though, is it doesn't necessarily mean, and that can be alarming. And that's the thing, right? You talk about fear, marketers can look at that and go, well, hang on a minute, my role is impressions, visibility, MQL, marketing qualified leads that I can provide to a sales team. And you're telling me that we're going to be seeing drops in website traffic and that's all changing. You go, where'd you start, right? But that's just because people's habits are changing and the way that people are engaging with online content is changing. We're asking questions. We're going to AI search, whereas perhaps, I don't know, a couple of years ago, you might have gone to Google, pumped in a long keyword or asked a question, had a load of results, analyzed that, maybe asked another question. Search is going to become much more conversational. So if we go back to that theory of using AI as a bit of a partner, somebody to bounce off in a way, we're bouncing off it when we're asking those questions. What print brands should I be considering for this? Of those, who specializes in this area? Okay, let's break that down in terms of price point. And you might start asking that question to a search engine. And a search engine is going to be, specifically an AI tool engine. That's then going to be crawling, providing that person with information before they've even landed on or visited your website. So that's just something that we need to think about as an evolving way to go. Now, the thing on that, though, as well, that's really key, and obviously as an agency, we're readying brands and supporting them in this way. But what's really important is that a lot of the fundamental rules, applications, ways of approaching this hasn't dramatically changed. Because for years now in SEO, we've been talking about providing education, authority, trust, thought leadership, not just focusing in on keyword, which is a really outdated way of doing things, right? It's about building up good trust signals, reviews, case studies, all of this holistic approach to search. So that is going to continue.
So the
The
fundamentals,
fundamentals stay the same. But how those fundamentals then happen, work, are applied, changes, and so we need to focus in on them more than ever before. Are we doing these trust signals? Are we providing all that lovely informational content? Are we analyzing performance on other engines so that we're not just solely looking at Google rankings? Because actually people aren't just going to Google. Yes, okay, before we had some activity on things like Bing as well, but now we're looking at Google, Bing, Claude, ChatGPT. Brands are generating leads from these platforms. So you then need to be analyzing performance in those as well. And that's what we're still in the relatively early stages of when you really look at it. But yeah, it's just part of that natural kind of evolution. But as I say, a lot of the fundamental applications and the way of doing things hasn't necessarily changed dramatically, even if some would like to scare and say, deep down, yes, we need to really focus in on this because it is the way that things are moving. But absolutely, a lot of those good practices will stand for a long time.
So I guess what I'm taking from our conversation today is, Dan, that yes, it's understandable that I feel overwhelmed at the moment, but actually a lot of the fundamentals of what I do as a marketer don't need to change. I still need to continue to ask my team what their challenges are. And I might use AI to help them solve those challenges, just like I may have used other tools or other resources to fix challenges alongside my team in the past.
Yeah.
AI is just another one. And then when we start to look outwardly in terms of how we market as a business, again, the fundamentals aren't changing. The things that you and your team have been talking to me about for the last 2 years, about content creation, about, you just mentioned case studies, about testimonials from customers, remain the same. We just may need to tweak and flex a little bit in terms of how we present that content to our potential customers or our customers. So I guess for me, one, look at those challenges, keep asking the team that. Two, think about how I can categorize those challenges into different areas, whether that be efficiency, whether it be creativity, whether it be scaling what I do, so volume of what I do. Start to look at some of those key AI tools. And I guess a bit of research will tell me who's using what out there and what best practice to a certain extent is. To not be afraid that things change really quickly, and to stand my ground and to pick something and go with it and try it, but also to be brave enough to be flexible when I do try things. Interesting. Dan, we could talk, I'm sure, for absolutely hours on this subject. And I found this not only enlightening and educational, but also my heart rate's gone down a little bit in terms of how overwhelmed I am. You've given me some confidence to go out there and know that some of the approaches I'm taking are right, but also there's some different things that I can potentially do. I'd love to have you back on the podcast at some point to give you a little bit of an update on what I've been up to. But, as you rightly said, the world is continuing to evolve and change. So it'd be great to keep up to speed with things with you on that. So thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Thanks, guys, for listening to this edition of Great Minds Print Alike. AI is overwhelming, but as Dan has explained today, we can also make what feels to be really complex simple. If you have any questions, please post them in our social channels or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks so much today.